Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing a hypothetical 2028 presidential election prediction. This one is going to be Democrat Pete Buttigieg going up against Republican Governor of Florida Ron DeSantis. Now, in the recent polling aggregate, we have seen that Pete Buttigieg is either polling in second or first place, depending on which poll you look at. A new Emerson poll just came out showing Buttigieg now in first place. So Buttigieg is looking like he could be the Democratic nominee, whereas on the Republican side of things, right now, J.D. Vance starts out as the clear favorite to be the Republican nominee in 2028. However, Ron DeSantis, who did run for president in 2024 against Donald Trump, is likely to run for president again in 2028. He does not start out as the favorite, but in most polls, if you include Donald Trump Jr., DeSantis starts out usually polling around third place. If Trump Jr. is taken out of the equation, which in all honesty, I probably would, as I don't think he's going to run against Vance, then you could see DeSantis and Rubio kind of close to being second or third, depending on the poll. So for this matchup, I'm doing Buttigieg versus DeSantis and how I think that matchup would go. Starting with the safe states for both candidates, I think Buttigieg would win Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, D.C., Maryland, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware, Connecticut, Vermont, Maine's 1st District, all in the safe column. And I think that's probably going to be it for safe. There's a few that I think could be safe, could be likely, but I'm going to leave off the safe column for now. DeSantis, all the states I think he'll win, safe: Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska at large in its 3rd district, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis' home state has trended a lot to the Republican direction, with DeSantis at the top of the ticket. I think Florida will go even more Republican, more than 15 points for Ron DeSantis. This puts DeSantis up at 151, Buttigieg 120. Now we have some states that are just a bit under the 15% margin in 2024, but I think in this matchup of Buttigieg versus DeSantis, they trend back up to being over 15% of the vote margin of victories. The first one being the state of Illinois and its 19 electoral votes. This state in 2024 went for Harris by 10.9% and for Biden by 17 in 2020. I think we see in this matchup of Buttigieg versus DeSantis it being right around 15 points, but I'm going to leave it in likely Democrat for now, around 14 and a half. New York and its 28, I think it's going to be a very similar situation, where in 2020 it was a 23-point win, 2024 was a 12.6% win. I'm putting it as likely Democrat, but I could certainly see that one being more than 15 points. The state of Colorado is another one that was a double-digit win for Kamala Harris, 11 points in 2024. It was a 13.5-point win for Biden in 2020. I think that starts out as likely Democrat. And one more, I think, actually no, we're going to leave it for later. We're going to talk about a little bit more in depth. Now we're going to go for the states I think are going to be likely for Ron DeSantis, starting with the state of Texas. Texas voted in 2020 for Trump by only 5.6%, but voted for Trump by 13.7% in 2024. I think DeSantis will be able to do that without much problem. Alaska will be a very similar situation. It's been likely Republican in 13 points in 2024, 10 points in 2020. 2016 was 14.7. I think Alaska will go likely Republican for Ron DeSantis in this scenario. Now we have some states that I also think are going to be likely for both Buttigieg and DeSantis, but I think they're going to be likely more on the closer side, meaning my likely margins are anywhere from 5 to 15%. The states that I've done so far, and likely I expect to be closer to that 15% threshold. Now these are the states I think are going to be in between that 5 and 10% threshold. I'll start with the Democrats. I already did Colorado. Now I'm going to throw in the state of Virginia and its 13 electoral votes. Virginia was more competitive in 2024, voting for Harris over Trump by 5.8% after Biden won it in 2020 by about 10 points. I think the government layoffs as effect of DOGE is going to hurt DeSantis or whoever the Republican nominee is in 2028, and Virginia is going to go about 8 points for the Democrat in this scenario for Pete Buttigieg. Another state that I think is going to be likely Democrat is the state of Maine and its 2 electoral votes. It voted for Trump by about 9 points, or for Harris over Trump. It voted for 9 points for Biden over Trump in 2020. In 2024, about 6.9% for Harris over Trump. DeSantis, being the governor of Florida, I think he'll do okay in the 2nd district, but Maine at large is going to be about a 9 to 8 point win or so for Buttigieg over DeSantis in this scenario. A controversial one could be the state of New Jersey, which showed a lot of trends to the Republican side in 2024. However, in 2028, with an election environment that should be more favorable for the Democrats in 2024 was Harris won it by 5.9, Biden won it in 2020 by 15.9. I think in this prediction, I'm going to see New Jersey being about a 9-point win for Buttigieg over DeSantis. Could be proved wrong on that one, but that's where I have that starting for right now. The state of New Mexico and its 5 electoral votes, I also have going likely Democrat. It voted for Harris by 6 points in 2024, almost 11 in 2020 for Biden. I have it being right around a 8.5 to 9-point win for Buttigieg in this scenario. Now I also have the state or Nebraska's 2nd congressional district as a likely Democratic win. 2024, Harris won it by 4.7%. Biden won it in 2020 by 6.6. I think it goes around that 6-point number yet again. That brings Buttigieg up to 212. We do have a few more states to go through as well. One more for Buttigieg on the likely side. That's going to be the state of Minnesota. Minnesota and its 10 electoral votes voted for Harris by 4.2% in 2024, but was a 7.1% win for Biden over Trump. I think that goes likely Democrat. Actually, I lied. I do have one more likely Democratic state to go over. This one was a toss-up in my most recent video, but the state of New Hampshire and its 4 electoral votes in 2020 voted for Joe Biden by 7.4%, though it voted for Trump or for Harris over Trump by 2.8% in 2024. I think Buttigieg versus DeSantis, New Hampshire would start out around a 5.5 to 6-point win for Buttigieg in this scenario. So Buttigieg gets up to 226. Now we have the states that I think are going to be likely for Ron DeSantis. Firstly is going to be Nebraska's 1st district, which voted as likely Republican for Trump by 13 points in 2024 and 14.9 for Trump in 2020. I think will be around likely once again. Maine 2nd, I also think will be likely for Ron DeSantis. It voted by 9 points for Trump in 24 and for 7.4 for Trump in 2020. I think DeSantis will probably win it by around a 7-point margin. This puts DeSantis up to 196. Now we have the state of Ohio and its 17 electoral votes and the state of Iowa and its 6 electoral votes. 2 states President Trump has made likely Republican states. I do think that DeSantis will do worse than Trump did in 2024. Trump won Ohio by 11.2, Iowa by 13.2. In 2020, Trump won Ohio by 8 and Iowa by 8.2. I think we're going to see something more similar to 2020 in Iowa and Ohio for DeSantis than 2024, because I don't think DeSantis will do as well with Rust Belt voters and working class voters as well as Donald Trump did. So I'm going to have Iowa and Ohio around 8.5-point wins in this election matchup between Buttigieg and DeSantis. Now we start going through the main battleground states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And this election is going to be very interesting because after 4 years of Donald Trump, DeSantis and Buttigieg are both going to be different than Trump. I'm sure Democrats will try and tie DeSantis to Trump, but how this actually goes is going to be interesting because DeSantis is not a part of Trump's administration. So at the same time, he doesn't have to take the brunt for what the administration has done, but he's also going to be a Republican who's going to be aligned a lot with MAGA and several MAGA policies, and that could hurt him depending on how the Trump administration is doing. So for this map, I'm going to start with the state of Nevada. Nevada very narrowly went for Donald Trump in 2020, or not narrowly, but by a pretty narrow margin of 3.1% against Kamala Harris, a lean Republican margin, after it went for Joe Biden by 2.4% in 2020 in a very close win. A large reason being Clark County's massive swing to the Democrat or to the Republican direction, a 2.6% win. I think in this matchup, there are a few Republicans that I think can do well in Nevada and expand on the margins that Trump got in Nevada in 2024. I think Ron DeSantis is probably not one of them. I think it's going to be very close, but I think Pete Buttigieg in this scenario wins the state of Nevada by under 1% of the vote. I think it'll be super close, and I think Nevada trending to the Republican side will help DeSantis out, but I don't think DeSantis is the right Republican to try and get a lot of voters in Clark County like President Trump was able to do. Arizona, however, we saw Arizona go towards Donald Trump in 2024 by 5.5% after Joe Biden narrowly won it in 2020. A large reason being that Arizona flipped was Maricopa County, which voted for Trump by 3.5% after it voted for Biden by 2.2%. This is one where it swung back to the Republicans. In 2024, I think it swings a little bit back to the Democrats in 2028, but I think Ron DeSantis will win this state by approximately 4 to 4.5% or so, losing about a point of Trump support, but still having it be a lean Republican state. Buttigieg 232, DeSantis 230. The state of Georgia is fascinating because this is a state that Buttigieg and DeSantis, I'm sure, will both try to contest. DeSantis being the governor of neighboring Florida, I think will certainly help him. The big knock on Georgia for Buttigieg is Buttigieg had very hard time getting African-American turnout in his presidential run in 2020. The early polling in that Emerson poll that I mentioned earlier also shows Buttigieg doing very poor with African-American support. And in the surrounding Atlanta area, that's the big reason why Joe Biden was able to win that state in 2020 was high levels of African-American turnout for him. If Buttigieg is having problems and not able to replicate that, I think we see Ron DeSantis hold on and narrowly win the state of Georgia by around 1 point. I think it's possible Buttigieg could win Georgia in 2028, depending on the election environment. But I think Buttigieg being the candidate, having trouble getting African Americans out to vote, gives DeSantis the win in the state of Georgia. North Carolina and its 16 electoral votes. This was a lean Republican state in 2024 for Donald Trump, 3.2% win for Trump. In 2024, 1.3% in 2020. I think this is a state Ron DeSantis will do pretty well in, a traditional Republican state. I think DeSantis will win North Carolina. This gets DeSantis up to 262. Buttigieg is at 232. Now we come to the Rust Belt. And this is where things could get tough for Ron DeSantis because being the governor of Florida, I think it's going to help him in some states like North Carolina, like Georgia, and like Arizona. Actually, I may even move Georgia up a little bit over 1% to about 1.2, 1.3%, putting Georgia lean Republican. But being the Florida governor may not help him all that much in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. There will be a lot of voters that President Trump won in 2016, 2020, and 2024 that will continue to vote for the Republicans, but a lot of them without Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, I think may not turn out to vote for Ron DeSantis. And the only Republican they may turn out to vote for is someone from Trump's administration, like J.D. Vance or maybe Marco Rubio. But DeSantis, I don't think will be able to do as well. And especially in the state of Wisconsin, where Trump narrowly won it by 0.86%, a large reason that the state went Republican was Trump's gains in the surrounding Dane area of Columbia, Sauk, Iowa, Greene, and Rock, and Racine and Kenosha surrounding Milwaukee. So Trump was able to improve in these margins a lot from 2020 to 2024. I can't see DeSantis doing as well as Trump did in 2024 in those areas. I think Pete Buttigieg starts out as the narrow winner in the state of Wisconsin, giving it to Pete Buttigieg and his 10 electoral votes. Michigan's another state that was very close in 2024, voted for Donald Trump by 1.4% against Kamala Harris. But this time around, again, President Trump was able to make a lot of important gains in key areas like Monroe, like Macomb, Oakland, St. Clair, and Wayne County. Trump's able to cut into the margins as well. Eaton was a close win for Trump. We saw Muskegon go closely for Trump. Saginaw, close win. Genesee's margins were cut. Grand Traverse, very similar. DeSantis is not the right type of Republican to try and do this in the Rust Belt. He may not be terrible in the Rust Belt as maybe some other Republicans could be, but I don't think he'll be able to do as well as Donald Trump. And after 4 years with Trump as president, I think Michigan's going to very narrowly go for Pete Buttigieg against Ron DeSantis, also by under 1%. I think this would be a very narrow election, but I think Michigan would also go about 1% for Buttigieg over DeSantis. And then I think the state of Pennsylvania would once again decide the election, and its 19 electoral votes very narrowly was very, very narrowly won by Trump in 2024 by 1.7% against Kamala Harris. After it was very narrowly won by Biden in 2020 by 1.2%, and very narrowly won by Trump in 2016 by 0.72. This is going to be one of the closest states in the country, as it was in 2024. A large reason Trump was able to win was improved margins in Erie and Center, in Bucks County, Lehigh, Northampton, Monroe, Lackawanna, and even some margins improvements in Chester and the surrounding Philadelphia area. Can Ron DeSantis keep up enough of the margins that Donald Trump got in 2024 that in 2020 Joe Biden was able to do? Can President Trump or can Ron DeSantis make the margins that Trump got? And in this scenario, I'm predicting that DeSantis will fall just a bit short. Pete Buttigieg will win the state of Pennsylvania by around half a percentage point. And with that, Pete Buttigieg would win a very close presidential election against Ron DeSantis, 276 to 262 for Buttigieg over DeSantis, and what I think would be a very, very close election, one of the closest in American history. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and hope to see you in a future video.